Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you. As you know, the Assembly Business Profession and Consumer Protection Committee is responsible for overseeing the enforcement issues for 40 regulatory boards at the Department of Consumer Affairs. And the mission of the department, of course, is to protect and serve the interest of California consumers. And as the chair of this committee, it has come to my attention that one regulatory body, the Physical Therapy Board of California, may be straying far from this core mission. And recent actions by the Physical Therapy Board suggest the existence of an improper relationship with a professional association, especially for the benefit of one small sector of the profession, those who work in private practice. And those in private practice physical therapy account for about 20% of all physical therapists. Yet the board has made significant and wide-reaching policy decisions that will provide a considerable economic advantage only to this small group. And at the same time, these decisions are threatening to end the employment of the other physical therapists. And this is placing their livelihood and families in jeopardy, not to mention placing the health and care of thousands of patients at risk. And furthermore, in my office review of the Physical Therapy Board's relationship with the California Physical Therapy Association, we have found instances where public funds were used for board's participation in association events. In addition, these two bodies have coordinated together to defeat legislation that would promote the pro-private practice policies that they've set in place. And finally, in an act that is absolutely unacceptable, the board has made it a priority to take punitive action against physical therapists who testified in support of a bill opposed by the California Physical Therapy Association. From time to time, it becomes necessary for the legislature to ensure that the boards and the bureaus of the Department of Consumer Affairs are protecting the interest of the public and not serving the interest of the professions they are supposed to regulate. Although it's been around for 55 years, the Physical Therapy Board of California has never been audited. And I believe that time has come for an audit to investigate these actions and ensure that the board's interaction with the Physical Therapy Association is in compliance with the law, especially when it comes to conflict of interest. We cannot allow regulatory agencies to stray from their mission to protect the public, to become complacent in their duties, and to believe that they can use their authority for benefits other than those due to the public. I respectfully call for this audit of the California Physical Therapy Board, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Assemblymember Hayashi indicated, this would be an audit of the Physical Therapy Board. One of the first objectives that we've been asked to accomplish is whether or not the board is complying with open meeting laws, what they're required to do as far as open meetings, and are they complying with that. So we would look at a sample of meetings and whether or not they're complying with the relative statutes. A specific objective that she touched on as far as conflict of interest would be looking at what the board does to monitor compliance with conflict of interest laws. What policies and procedures do they have to prevent and inform board members of their responsibilities, as well as the executive director, and whether or not their actual policies comply with laws requiring procedures to prevent conflicts of interest from occurring. In addition to that, looking at the nature and extent of both the executive officer and other board members and their interactions with professional organizations, and do some comparisons to other boards. We have audited other boards in the past and looked at some of these very same types of objectives. The one in particular that we looked at a few years ago is the chiropractic board, looking at conflict of interest, looking at their compliance with open meetings, looking at complaint process, et cetera. So that would be one board I think we could compare them to, but certainly there are other licensing boards that we would compare the physical therapy board's policies and procedures to see whether or not they were in line. In addition to that, she's asked that we look at 3 years of expenditures to make sure that those expenditures, including travel, she called out travel expenses in her request, to determine whether those expenditures for that 3-year window are reasonable and are the appropriate and consistent with laws and regulations. Then we have been asked to look at the complaints process. Again, similar to what we've done in other audits, looking at their policies and procedures for accepting a complaint, determining whether they're going to open a complaint, how they go about investigating that complaint, and closing complaints. So the whole process relative to that. In addition, we would pull a sample of complaints and determine how the board made its decision to prioritize or not prioritize a particular complaint. How do they decide who that complaint is going to be assigned to as far as their investigators, or whether or not they need an expert to assist in investigating that complaint? What criteria do they use to select experts and determine when they need expertise to help? And then looking at their decision-making process as far as not only reasonableness, but consistency. Are they consistently taking a course of action? If they substantiate a complaint, are they being consistent in the actions they're taking against that particular individual for which they've substantiated a complaint? And then contrary to that, for those complaints they've chosen to close without an enforcement action, again, is that being done in a manner that's consistent with their protocols, but certainly consistent with regulations and state law, and as I said, their policies. Not a very big audit. It's about 1,880 hours. That would take us approximately 5 months, probably a little less than that, because this is very similar to audits we've done of other boards. So we have some experience in doing this. With that, I'll answer any questions members may have.
Is there any testimony from the affected agency? Any testimony in support of the audit? Any testimony in opposition of the audit? Go ahead.
Ryan Spencer with the California Medical Association. Sorry, I was slow to the hop up here. I appreciate the Assembly member's request. I'm fairly new to the California Medical Association, spending a good portion of my time prior to this in the legislature and looking at issues of government efficiency. And there's, in my short period at CMA, I was fairly surprised when I did witness the interactions between the Physical Therapy Board and the Professional Association. And I was curious to see what, we've done on our end is to kind of look more into that. And come to find out, we did actually submit a request through the CPRA to the PT board, just asking for simple things like their calendar, their phone logs, and any other type of document regarding their interactions with the issue that she pointed out in the appointment of the physical therapist.
You're speaking in support of the audit.
I'm speaking in support of
it.
But they responded by submitting their appointment calendar for their board staff and 2 of their board members, printed out some already created documents, and they couldn't provide us any other info. The cost for that information was $3,400, and they said they expended 85 hours of staff time to get that information. If you want our appointment calendars, I can probably go back to my office, print it out, and bring it to you right now. It just shows the lack of efficiency of a board, which I think needs to be addressed. I think it is an appropriate request of the auditor to look into those issues as well as the ones that Ms. Hayashi requested, and I would ask for you to support that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Testimony in opposition of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Good morning. Carl London here on behalf of the California Physical Therapy Association. I want to be very clear, we're not testifying in opposition to the request, but did want to make a couple of comments. Want to give an assurance from our perspective that, while the claims are that there's some sort of inappropriate relationship, I describe it as a very healthy relationship. I spent some time last night with our board of directors talking this through, and they assured me that there were at least a half a dozen great examples in the last couple of years where we had asked the board to consider doing things a couple different ways with regards to regulatory issues. The board says thank you very much for your input and does exactly the opposite or does it a completely different way. The other thing I'd mention is that the claim about focusing on employment, this board does its job quite well. It's seen within the department and within the agency as a model board. The recently retired executive officer is, quite frankly, a poster child advertisement for what you want your executive officer to do as a public servant. And we're not afraid at all of the audit, but think that given the fact that you have next year our board up for review in the sunset review process, this seems like an entirely duplicative process to that, and seems like a waste of money. But if the committee wants to do that, we know the auditor is quite well respected for her work and her agency's work, and we have no problems with that at all. But it's largely duplicative of what you're going to be doing and looking at this board anyway next year.
Great, thank you. Any other testimony?
Yes, Paul Gaspar, physical therapist and taxpayer. I wanted to say, you're probably aware, you probably followed this bill a little bit. This really amounts to a fishing expedition. We all know why we're here. Ms. Hayashi would like to support the 2% of physical therapists that work for illegal medical corporation-run physical therapy clinics. These clinics.
Let's talk to the audit, please. We don't want to talk about the legislation or any attacks on Ms. Hayashi.
Okay. Well, that's why we're here today. This will be a completely empty fishing expedition and a complete misuse of taxpayer funds. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing and hearing no other testimony, can I call for motion? Oh, go ahead. Senator Dutton has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just under the question that came up with one of the people. I think it was Carl London. This board is coming up for review here this next year, and
No,
with this,
2013 they're up for sunset review, and what we would like to do is have the audit information so that we can be responsible legislators and use that information to do the sunset review. Because a lot of the discussions that we provided, a lot of the points that we provided to you today, we're not able to obtain through Public Records Act request. And I didn't pass this out, but Senator Price and Senator Emerson sent a letter to the Physical Therapy Board asking them to not investigate these physical therapists working as employees, and the board has completely ignored that. So as a legislature, we have not been able to get information out of the board, and I feel that it is necessary for us to move forward with the audit so that we can use that information for the sunset review process.
well, no, I was just curious, and maybe the auditor can fill me too. When you do the review, when this board comes up on the sunset provisions, and are you going to be doing a review process that's similar to this audit?
No, my office isn't involved in the sunset review process. I think that's Assemblymember Huber and others, but as Assemblymember Hayashi indicated, as I said, the audit will take us about 5 months, so we would have this information available to the Sunset Committee and the legislature by, spring or early, by June at the latest of next year, about 2012.
Would find this helpful information to have. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. I actually chair the committee that would be doing the sunset review process.
Senator Huber, go ahead.
Just as chair of the Sunset Joint Legislative Sunset Review Committee, it is the B&P committee that is doing the sunset reviews for a lot of these boards and commissions that fall within their jurisdiction within the next 4 years. But as the chair of Sunset Review, I do want to echo Ms. Hayashi's comments that audits are helpful in that process as an in-depth investigative way to look at everything that's going on. The conclusions can be drawn by the legislature after the audit, but information is always helpful.
Okay, there's, go ahead, Senator Anderson.
Just as a, moving forward, are we anticipating doing additional audits on other boards and commissions that are coming up before the sunset review? I mean, are we now making the choice, I'm not saying for good or for bad, but are we now making the choice that this is one of the steps going into the sunset review? Because if we are, I'd just like to know.
I think from time to time, the legislature has come to this committee requesting an audit of a board or commission, and there are a number of examples and issues that I talked about in my opening statement that shows that there's clear conflict of interest between the association that's representing a very small segment of the profession, and the regulator. And so we've been working with the state auditor to come up with a series of questions that could be addressed. And I applaud the lobbyists for the Physical Therapy Association for not opposing the audit. As he indicated, if there is nothing to hide, I think this audit request should be moving forward, and the information, whatever we find through the audit process, should be beneficial to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Ms. Hayashi. I think Senator Huber has a
I just want to make it clear for the record that I'm not supporting this audit as a process of having audits prior to any sunset review. I think it depends on who's being reviewed, on whether you need additional information from an audit or not. Just in response to Senator Anderson's concern that we're setting a precedent that we're going to audit everybody before their sunset review date, that's certainly not my position.
Understood. There is a motion by Alejo and a second by Ms. Huber. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lara?
Aye.
Lara, aye. Alejo? Aye. Alejo, aye. Donnelly? Huber?
Aye.
Huber, aye. Monning? Not voting. Monning, not voting. Norby? Smythe? Smythe, no. Alquist? Anderson? DeLeon? Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. LaMalfa? Aye. LaMalfa, aye. Rubio? Volk? It's on call.
That request is on call, and we'll keep you updated.